Go after that.
They're just
leg.
going
Gonna shoot
to let
the leg.
you know. We're not hiding this one, folks. Broken leg. Lower body would have probably been, the usual fare, but not in this case. Exciting times, Sabres and Kings tonight. Also exciting times right now. Matt Harmon with us on the West Her hotline, receptionperception.com. Matt, great to talk to you again. How's life?
Life is good, man. Yeah, I've been looking forward to talking to you guys for a while because it has certainly been an eventful time over there with the Buffalo Bills. So I'm very excited to chat today for sure.
Thank you. Yes, we had to move a couple times, and thank you for being flexible with us. Well, wide receiver has never stopped being a topic of conversation on this radio station. And wouldn't you know, the season ended kind of in keeping with the whole complaint.
Yeah, I've been pointing out to a number of our guests as we're talking it all through here that the final two passes Josh Allen threw were targeted for Mecole Hardman Jr. and Brandon Cooks, which really tells you a lot about the receiving core in 2025.
Incredible. Yeah, I mean, that obviously I'm sure you guys and everybody listening and everybody in the Buffalo area obviously has, big feelings about, the Brandon Cooks catch, interception, the whole thing. To me, my big reaction there is we're throwing to Brandon Cooks in the divisional round to try to go to the AFC Championship. And again, Brandon Cooks obviously has been a really nice player in this league, and frankly, he outkicked my expectations with the Buffalo Bills. He did much more than I probably expected him to do. That being said, he was a completely unused player by a 2-win Saints team. He was being targeted on 8.8% of his routes through the first 10, 11 weeks of the season for the New Orleans Saints, who, again, had 2 wins at the time. And he's the most important wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills trying to go to the championship. It was a crazy development. And, yeah, as you said perfectly, wide receiver is always a talking point with this franchise.
Matt, where is it more than anywhere else that maybe they went wrong? I mean, trading Diggs when they did it, there was off-the-field stuff. It made enough sense, and he was getting older anyway. But was it the Coleman pick? Is it a philosophical thing? Where did the Bills? How did the Bills end up here, really?
So I think the Diggs trade, honestly, I think it looks bad in hindsight for the Bills because Stephon Diggs is currently, playing for a team that's in the Super Bowl, and the Bills, desperately want to be in the Super Bowl. I get that. At the same time, though, I think that relationship needed to end when it ended. I think it was the right time for both parties because you guys know this is life. Like, relationships sometimes can be really good, and you can look back on it, and again, I'm sure Bills fans don't feel the same way, but Diggs had a couple comments this year after playing the Bills, being like, yeah, like I had great years there, I had great years with the quarterback, all that type of stuff. It ended when it needed to end, and I think the fact that Diggs has gone on and been not a number one receiver for the Texans or for the Patriots, like he might be the best receiver on the Patriots, but he's no longer at the level of a wide receiver one for that team. He's a very good complementary piece in their passing game. It's just tough from a political standpoint to take your elite number one receiver, if you're the Bills, and start, minimizing his role in the offense. Because in my opinion, I think he started to decline, not, like he's washed or anything, but started to decline from that elite form in 2023 actively in that season. And so you just can't really minimize that guy's role while also keeping him on the roster at the salary. Like it was time for that relationship. I don't fault them for that move. I do think just not ignoring, but just misevaluating other players at that outside receiver position after the fact was the issue. Whether it was taking Coleman and saying this guy is an ex-receiver, because you guys know this. I said this many times. I thought his best home would be as a big slot receiver in the NFL. Just at the level of separation that he gets, he just can't be a high-volume ex-receiver. And I think trying to live in that, I think overcorrecting from, hey, we have an elite number one who the world revolves around him in the passing game, and even more than that, the world just revolves around this guy, to then, everybody eats. I think they overcorrected and kind of got a bunch of, guys that really are not even really needle moving number three receivers on other rosters to be your top outside receivers. Josh Palmer, for example. I mean, the Chargers completely moved on from him. I think that was the issue for this team. It kind of overcorrecting what they were before.
Yeah, so the way forward with Coleman, not surprisingly, he's come up here the last 2 weeks, volunteered information from the owner last week at the news conference to discuss them moving on from Sean McDermott, and that was kind of sloppy. One thing that's on a list of many things that I think were handled sloppy by the organization around McDermott's dismissal. But today, Joe Brady, the new head coach, is confirming, I stood on the table for Keon Coleman, and I'm going to be the best thing that ever happened to him. Being his head coach is going to be the best thing that ever happened to Keon Coleman. How recoverable do you think he is? Does he need to move to the slot in order to be a functional piece for them? Because Shakir is living there.
Yeah, see, that was the problem, too, that even when they took Coleman, your best receiver is Khalil Shakir. Your most useful receiver is Khalil Shakir, and he kind of has to play in the slot for his role to come to life and for him to be the best version that he is. A guy that has been a huge hit for them as a fifth-round pick and an extension player. So I think – but there are ways that they can use Coleman almost akin to a slot receiver, but he's not lining up in the slot. And same thing with Khalil Shakir, too. I'd love to see those guys line up next to each other, real tight condensed bunches and stuff like that where, Coleman can be your on-ball slot and Shakir can be your off-ball out wide receiver. I think there's ways for those two guys to be activated and used in combinations in that way. You've seen that a little bit with Seattle's done that at time with Jackson Smith and Jigba, who was a guy that was a slot-only player at Ohio State and in his first few years in the NFL. Now, he obviously is a much better man coverage receiver than either Shakir or Keon Coleman, which is why he's been able to thrive as a true X in Seattle's offense. But there have been times where they did that with Kupp and JSN. There's been times where the Rams have done that with Kupp and Puka Nacua, kind of to essentially almost make them into slot players. I think the Bills can do that, but it does require getting somebody in the room who can be a true X and line up in isolation on the outside. And I think there will be players available both in free agency and in this draft cycle that there are options there. That's one way forward. The other way forward is to say, hey, what if we get something from Keon Coleman? It's gravy, but we're not going to plan for him to be the starter. But I do love Brady's comments, and I think that was a much better way to handle the Keon Coleman thing than what happened at the previous press conference, and I'll leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. Matt, to your point, I think that would necessarily mean that Kincaid isn't on the field. And that's what's been baffling maybe, or just sort of tricky, to be nice, about this whole situation is, you drafted Kincaid to play a certain role kind of in that same spot on the field. And yes, he's been in and out of the lineup, but they're not taking Knox off the field if they want to run the ball like they have the last 2 years. So he's a tight end and not exactly in your domain, but I'm sure you have some opinion on what the Bills have in Kincaid at this point, who has been somewhat of a difference maker when he's played. He doesn't play a ton of snaps, but he's been all right.
Yeah, absolutely. At times, I think I don't even know if it's debatable that he was their best downfield receiver this season when he was healthy. And he obviously was not consistently healthy. He hasn't been consistently healthy. But at one point this year, he was in historic company in terms of yards per route run at the tight end position. I know I posted that at one point this season, that he was just in an incredibly impressive area. Yeah, I actually just found it right now. This was back mid-December, December 11th. But Kincaid was averaging at that point 2.89 yards per route run. That was fourth among tight ends since 2015 with 150-plus routes. The other guys on the list are Rob Gronkowski, George Kittle, Mark Andrews, and then 3 straight George Kittle seasons. Obviously, we don't think that Kincaid is, by the way, what a baller, George Kittle. But we don't think Kincaid's in that bucket, but that's the level of receiving impact he was bringing to his team from an efficiency standpoint. And I think there's a lot that he can bring to the table, but you're right to point out that, hey, if we're doing all this catering to Keon Coleman and to Khalil Shakir to try to get what is, I think, useful play out of both those guys, that does put us in a little bit of contrast with our first-round tight end, who I think they should pick up the fifth-year option, as Bean said that they will do. And this kind of gets me to my point about Joe Brady's offense The Brady thing, and look, from a process standpoint and the way it was sold, I understand why Bills fans might not be happy about that, and I've got my skepticism about that too. But just from a offensive design standpoint, I'm actually a really big fan of Joe Brady, and I think that he has been – I think his coaching staff, it just obviously has not been communicated that way via the way ownership has talked about it and handled it with the promotions and stuff. I think this offensive staff has had to operate with one hand tied behind their back because Bean has put together a room here. We want to group all pass catchers, wide receivers, and tight ends. It just takes a lot of specificity and role catering, and none of these guys just get separation on their own on the outside. That makes it really hard on a play caller in Joe Brady, who I watched with my eyeballs put together 1,000 yard from scrimmage players in Carolina in his first season as the OC with Teddy Bridgewater as the quarterback. Like, they just have better pass catching talent, and I think that's the end of the story there.
Yeah, that is one of the biggest, at least for me, objections. I don't know, this may be too strong, but something I'm concerned about. And they use the word alignment a number of times today, and it was referenced when McDermott was let go, that they weren't in alignment, that he maybe was challenging them too much on the roster, and that seemed to really upset Pagula for sure, and probably Brandon Bean. And so, fresh eyes, fresh perspective, someone that's going to challenge you. I'm nervous that they're just going to think Brady can just continue to sprinkle the pixie dust that he has, that has helped his team score 30 points a game last year and 28 and a half or whatever the number was this past season. And I think, they need to overhaul that room, and I'm just worried that his being hired will give them reason to think maybe they don't have to go that far.
I share your skepticism there and your concern about the entire thing because, just to me, when they lost that game against Denver, I said this on Football 301, our Yahoo Sports show with Nate Tice that evening when we did a live show. I was like, I don't think this is kind of a weird time to fire Sean McDermott because I don't think his coaching job this year, at least from the information that I would see on the outside, deserves to be let go. I think this was more of a roster problem. And then just basically everything they've said publicly and with both words and actions has been completely disagreeing with that coming out of Buffalo. So I think I'm with you there that I think this needs to be a moment of introspection for the front office and kind of a look in the mirror moment for what they've done with this pass catching group, because there's just a lot they've done really well from an offensive standpoint. Like, they've built a pretty badass run game. The offensive line, with now Aaron Cromer's retiring, that's another thing to talk about too. That group is good. Obviously Josh Allen's Josh Allen, but this definitely requires, and I think this could be the inflection point. Hey, we're promoting Joe Brady, and hopefully Brady has some different ideas and can maybe be more empowered. The guy played wide receiver himself back at William and Mary, about an hour and a half from where I live here. The guy has a receiver background. Like I said, I think he did a wonderful job maximizing and putting DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, Curtis Samuel in these roles that made sense in Carolina. And I just think the players, it comes back to the players and the process of acquiring those players here in Buffalo. But I share your concern that a lot of the actions here indicate it's going to be more of the same. I don't think that's a tenable situation if that's what happens here.
And there's only so much you can do, Matt. Like, if they had a whole different attitude about the wide receiver position, what do they do about it? Maybe there's some huge trade you might be able to imagine. Otherwise, it's free agency, which you hinted earlier that you think that there might be a good idea or two there for them. I'd be curious about that. Or the draft. They're drafting late again. You did tweet about Ted Hurst, by the way, his name came up on our show yesterday.
State.
Yes, back-to-back show appearances for Ted Hurst. Here we go. But
the pride of Georgia State, baby.
The pride of Georgia State.
Everybody expected. But
yes.
That's a great point about the Bills being in a tough spot with the wide receiver. Just how it's going to go. Here's the thing. Like, I've started to look at draft prospects earlier than ever this year. I've actually got about 2 to 4 games done on about 12 to 13 players right now. And every time I put out a video compilation of Mekhi Lemon just absolutely dominating against Iowa. And I got Bills fans in the comments be like, what do the Bills got to do to get him? I'm like, well, you're not going to get him. You need to have lost 5. You need to have won 5 games last year to have gotten him. You didn't do that. You went to the divisional round. You're probably not getting this guy. So there are going to be guys available in that late first, early second that I think fit the mold of what they want. But because what I think they need is specifically like an outside separator, especially one who could potentially play X receiver, those options are going to be limited. Like, I really like Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. He fits the separation bill that they need. But we got to see what his measurables are. Like, could he be a guy that they need that sort of size and separation ability? That's tough. Might not be available in the end of the first round. Maybe a guy like Denzel Boston could be that type of player for them, who is a size, speed type of, or definitely a size guy, and I think has the ability to play X in the NFL. Other than that, then it gets kind of dicey. But are they looking at like Alec Pierce in free agency? Mm-hmm. That would be a guy that I think could make a lot of sense for them. But I am a little worried that Pierce is going to go from one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL to kind of overpaid in free agency, because that's kind of how it goes. And I'm not even sure the Colts are going to let him out of their building. So then, do they call Jacksonville about a Brian Thomas Jr. trade? I would say if any team was to go, hard in the paint to get that done, Buffalo does make sense to do it. You're just obviously taking a risk on a player that had a bad season last year and kind of fell out of favor with the new coaching staff.
Matt, who's your number one best wide receiver in the NFL?
Oh, gosh, I love the question. I think coming out of this year, James Coe and I on Reception Perception show, we do an award show every single season right around this time. I gave the honor of best receiver in the NFL this year to Puka Nacua. And by the way, and number two is JSN. I think coming out of this year, you got to say those two guys. And obviously then Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson still belong in the conversation to me. But those guys are up there. But I think specifically Nacua and JSN and St. Brown is pretty close in this conversation too. I mean, guys, when we first I don't know when the first time I came on your radio station is, because we've had so many good conversations over the years, and it's been a good relationship, hopefully for both sides.
Yes,
definitely, yeah.
But whatever the first show was, it's been a long time, and I've been studying receivers since 2014. Guys like Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, even Jackson Smith-Njigba to a certain extent, these were not like the best receivers in the NFL from an archetype standpoint, 10 years ago. In 2014, and I started the first year started charting league-wide data. So we're seeing a shifting in the tide at the wide receiver position in terms of who are the best guys. And I think that's instructive for teams that are looking, for wideouts this year. But yeah, I think coming out of this year, former fifth-round pick Puka Nacua probably has to be considered the best receiver in the NFL, but it's a crowded group.
Matt, Mike is much better at being like the show historian, but the first time I can remember talking to you, that's not to say it didn't happen before and I just forgot about it, was right after the Bills traded for Diggs.
Yeah.
Because you were such a big fan of his, and but there was a lot going on at that time. That was like COVID was just starting to happen, but I remember first talking to you then. So.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
I certainly remember it being, because I was living in LA at the time. I feel like I remember it being in, not that anybody cares about this, my apartment on Clarington Avenue. So that would put it, again, not that anybody would care. That would put it actually somewhere in like 2019 or something.
Okay.
So,
I was doing the same thing today with this press conference, thinking about other Bills coach introductory press conferences and where I was. And I was thinking of Doug Marrone in my old house, sitting like where the computer was and having headphones on to not distract anybody and just listening to that. So yeah, that's funny. That's how you remember it. Well, Matt,
well, boys, what that means is we're lucky to still be doing this.
Yes,
and it's better than having a real job. Let's say that.
It sincerely is always a great pleasure. Maybe I'll see you in the fantasy space again this year. ADP Chasing debuts next Tuesday. Just saying. We have a seat for you anytime you want. I say that.
Hey, let me know. I'm around. Yeah, and hopefully see you again soon. And it's always good talking to you boys. I'm sure the Bills will give us more reasons to get back together and talk wide receivers here in the next couple of months. That would be my prediction there.
For better or worse. Very good.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for working with us. Moving around so many times, Matt. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thank you guys.
You're welcome. Matt Harmon, receptionperception.com. I think we didn't ask him.